Hi, everybody. Welcome to the sixth Healthy Christian podcast. Tim and I are discussing this week the sermon from Chris Maybe, which happened on Sunday, and his subject was what leads to healthy relationships and social health. So,
Mm,
social and relational health.
yes.
Really interesting points that Chris brought out in this series that we're following. Tim and I are going to think about some questions off the back of that and just note as well different points that Chris made so we can make sure that we're all benefiting from those. We've got a couple of questions that have come in from people in the church as well, which we'll cover off at some point today as well.
Yeah.
So, Chris was preaching on Sunday and he intentionally took a Jesus centric approach. So he was
Yes.
looking at Jesus's pattern of relationships and friendships and different things that decisions that Jesus made. Chris asked some questions like, who do you count as a close friend?
Mm,
What do you value in their friendship? What are the hallmarks of a healthy community? And he dived into social science research and longitudinal studies. I certainly have got one book that I'll refer to, which is a popular book related to that Harvard longitudinal study, the world's longest study on happiness. So I'm sure
yeah.
I'll dive into bits then. And Tim, you've got a book you'll probably draw on as well. Um, Chris did talk about something about the size of our neocortex. So maybe we should start off by comparing the size of our neocortexes. No,
Go for
okay,
it.
we won't do that. Um, and he moved on to some points that Jesus clearly was intentional about. Jesus invested in friendships. He talked about Peter, James, and John. He talked about the 12 and the 72, and
Yeah.
then he talked about the 500
Yeah.
in First Corinthians is referred to. Um, Jesus used social occasions to further his kingdom purposes, which is a really interesting thought. And then the third one, Jesus reinvents the idea of ecclesia, ecclesia being the Greek word for church, but of course it pre-existed, and it was
Mm,
originally a Roman term meaning a political assembly of citizens.
mm,
And how Jesus, Chris said, Jesus invests a familiar secular term with spiritual agency. And
mm,
so then he asked, what does a healthy ecclesia look like? And talked
mm.
about that for a little bit. So we've got loads to talk about today. Maybe just kick off by starting with what jumped out at you, Tim. What did you most note, or what landed with you most?
I really appreciated Chris using those concentric circles and
Mm,
I think it's the Dunbar research, and
yeah,
then overlaying particularly Jesus' different relationships, although other relationships in scripture as well, onto those different layers.
mm,
And what one of the things I felt freshly encouraged by was permission given for different layers and levels of friendship and
mm,
the value that there is in each. Um, Sometimes you can kind of have this misunderstanding that everyone needs to be your best friend, or you need to
yeah,
give yourself fully to everyone, or and I think it's easy to get maybe a bit spread too thinly. So just like Jesus unapologetically taking Peter, James, and John up the mountain and into
mm,
the Garden of Gethsemane.
mm,
Um, just that just kind of I love it when like science backs up scripture,
yeah, yeah,
and the sort of social science idea, and kind of Chris pointed to the Jethro advice to Moses about sort of delegation and
yeah,
grouping and
yeah,
um, yeah, I thought it gave a lot of permission and
yeah,
encouragement to invest in all those layers and levels.
mm,
Um, it made me think of sort of our prayer triplet kind of idea, or
mm,
and then life groups particularly, and then our sort of Sunday gatherings, and
yeah,
just felt encouraged about the fact that that is something we see already in the life of the church, and we're encouraged already in the life of the church. It made me want to encourage myself, my family, and us as a church family, kind of to lean into all those layers. Really moved by this idea that we've shared a number of times before, but it came out starkly again. Loneliness kills,
yes,
and that study that perhaps you can refer to in a moment, James,
yeah,
just showing us that the
yeah,
strong, yeah, if you want to be healthy, what's the best investment you can make? Is it a running machine?
yeah,
Is it I don't know, some supplements. No, it's friendships, it's meaningful connections, it's relationships.
Yeah.
That's powerful because again, that proves scripture right.
Yes.
Yeah, God said right in the garden, it's not good for man to be alone. Yeah, we
Yeah.
are created for connection.
Yes.
Is a phrase I think sums it up nicely. We're created for connection. We're created for connection with God, but also with each other, and
Yeah.
we die without it. We literally shrivel up and die
Mm.
without those
Mm.
connections and friendships and relationships.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, there's just a few thoughts. What about you? What stood out for you?
It's really helpful. I just want to respond to something you said because it's really sparked some things in me. Before I do that, no, I'll tell you what, I'll do this and then maybe we could come back to just explaining that Dunbar's number, just in case people
Yeah,
didn't catch it on Sunday or they haven't
yeah,
heard of it, if you
worth
would
going
do
a bit
that. So
deeper. Yeah.
one of the quotes from this book, a study by researcher Janice Keegold Glazer was investigating psychological stress, and that relates to loneliness as well, in terms of what you were saying there.
Mm,
What she wanted to find out was whether that stress affected other body processes, such as how physical wounds heal.
wow.
The results were startling. She looked at caregivers. She sampled two groups of women. The first were the primary caregivers for loved ones with dementia. The
Mhm.
second was a group roughly the same age who were not caregivers.
Mm,
The results were startling. The wounds of the non-caregivers. So I jumped a step there. She did uh, a punch biopsy just above the elbow. So a common medical procedure normally used to remove and examine a small piece of skin. So the
okay.
results were startling. The wounds of the non-caregivers took about 40 days to heal, but the wounds of the caregivers took 9 days longer to heal. The
Okay.
psychological stress of caring for a loved one, which
Wow.
emerged from the slow erasure of important relationships in their lives, was preventing their bodies from healing. So,
Wow.
a physiological effect on our bodies from being less connected with others to
Yeah.
loneliness.
Okay.
Incredible.
Because a caregiver, if you're caring for someone with dementia, it's very draining. There's not
Yes,
much connection there. Okay.
yes,
In my mind, it was going the other way. I thought there
right.
was, but the detail of there being caregivers
Because it's
for,
so overwhelming and so
yes.
involving, you don't have time to make the connections and manage
Um,
and invest in your relationships outside of that care. So
yeah.
you're isolated. Did you want to just explain the Dunbar's number thing quickly?
So I'll do my best and then jump into the bits I've
Yeah,
missed. What I understood from, I've heard of Dunbar's number as 150 meaningful relationships, but what Chris brought out was these different levels and layers.
yeah,
And the picture he showed on the screen on Sunday was very helpful. Talked about five loved
yeah,
ones, 15 good friends,
yeah,
50 just friends, 150 meaningful contacts, 500 acquaintances, and then 1,500 people that you will recognize.
yeah,
And so I think I understand other people have tested this and kind of had similar results of the kind of different levels of relationship. And so I think when people talk about Dunbar's number, they often are referring to that 150 from what I've heard previously. But I actually thought it was really helpful to think of those different layers and levels.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really helpful, just in case anyone didn't catch that. And so, what I took away from that, my understanding is the relational bandwidth. So you led on this just a moment ago.
Yes.
It's not possible to have a relational depth with 150 people that you could with your five closest relationships. So it's
Yeah.
just recognizing that we're finite, we're limited,
Good.
and I think that it can help us understand how and where we're investing time and investing in relationships as well. It could be that different people move from the five group to the 15 or to the 120 at different points in time based on
Right.
life and our relationships. But
Right.
I think it is important for us to note that. And you said it gives us permission to have
Yes.
different levels of relationship and closeness. And what Chris brought out, of course, was effectively Jesus was investing in relationships in that kind of way. What I
Yes.
liked as well, what I got from what Chris said is because primarily I've always thought of that as Jesus is giving to others.
Mm.
He's investing in others, but actually Jesus is fully human, and so he needed
He
relationship as
needs,
well.
yeah.
And so there's something about him modeling what will be good and healthy for us. So I thought that was great.
That's so good, isn't it? I was going to ask a cheeky question. Are any of
Yeah,
those layers or levels more important than the others?
yeah. I don't really know. I mean, I don't know is my answer to that. Chris touched on the difference between introverts and extroverts. He talked about thick and thin relationships. So introverts may be more inclined to have thick relationships, which are kind of deeper and they're sharing more of themselves. Extroverts more inclined to have thin relationships, lots of different relationships and being and less deep. I don't know. I don't know how that plays out or how that works.
Yeah, I challenge that a little, but because that's not my, I'm an extrovert, and my
Yeah.
relation, I'm blessed with really deep relationships.
Yeah.
And a few, and a few, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I would
But
personally challenge that, but yeah, I would appreciate there are differences, which is useful to capture.
yeah. Yeah. My gut feeling would be if you don't have a small number of deep relationships, that can't be replaced by a larger number of, if you want to call them, more shallow relationships. That would be my gut feeling. I'm certainly my personal experience. I feel, unless, if I think about when I was younger, going through stages in my 20s where I would say I would have a lot of different social connections and things happening, but fewer deep personal relationships. That felt very dissatisfying to me. Um, yeah, what else struck me? So, one thing I'm quoting from the book, which Chris did talk about as well, this amazing stat. So, research bears this out. It's borne out over this 80-year study. The people who were most satisfied in their relationships at age 50 were the healthiest mentally and physically at age 80.
Yeah, incredible.
It's like, wow. And maybe that will ask us the question for those of us who are in our 50s, because if not all of us are on this call, Tim, only some of us are. So what do we do about that then? What advice would we give to people? Say you're looking at your life. This is making you think, okay, where am I at in my relationships? And I'm not satisfied with my relationships. What could someone do about that?
Good question, and just to sort of build on the question, because Chris did also say it's easier to make friendships when earlier in life. It was a little throwaway comment, but it
Yeah,
struck me
yeah,
as true.
yeah,
He encouraged, yeah, for those who are younger, really invest in those friendships. I'm blessed with friendships that I was literally on the phone to someone last night, and I'm like, I've been
mm,
friends with him 30 years,
wow,
and and God willing, we'll be friends another 30 years. So
yeah,
there is something, for our many younger listeners,
yeah,
there is something about investing in those friendships younger. But I felt there was great hope in the fact that at 50 or beyond, it's
yeah,
still worth and still an important investment to build
yes,
good quality relationships and
yeah,
social community structure, because that's going to still serve you later in life.
yeah,
One of the things I thought was, wow, that's a real encouragement. If you are in your 50s, 60s, 70s, still invest in those friendships, still find ways of building those connections, because I think because it is actually, you know, not only is it good for you, but it is an outworking of the gospel as well.
yeah,
So it's not just to do it because it will help you be happier or help you be healthier. I think there are other motivations as well, gospel led, grace led motivations too. But
yes,
yeah, so I thought that was the first thing I wanted to say. Really, there's hope.
yeah,
This is still relevant. If you're listening to this later on in life,
yes.
it's still relevant, and you could even say even more relevant, even more important.
Mm. Um,
Did you ask the how question? I felt like possibly that was within what you were saying. How do
yeah.
we go
So
about
what
making?
could someone do? Say they're in their 50s or even younger or older, and this is making them think, okay, what are the quality of my relationships like? Am I satisfied with my relationships? And they decide, I'm not fully satisfied.
Yeah.
What advice, what support could we give them?
Yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts too. Just the first thing I would say is recognize that it takes courage and
Mm,
intentionality. I think it takes great courage to put yourself out there
yes.
and you're saying to the world, you're saying to the individual, you know, am I worthy enough, lovable enough,
Yeah. Yeah.
someone that you would want to connect with? And I
Yeah.
recognize that a lot of us would struggle with that. We'd be like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm not sure. I'm not
Yeah.
sure what I think about me and whether I'm someone that someone else would want to spend time with. So recognize the courage, recognize the intentional investment needed. These, relationships take time. And I would like, for me, just really simple kind of idea that I think is, it has a lot of traction to it. Do some things that are fun,
Yeah.
like follow your interests. Let's say
Yeah.
you're a, I mean, I often talk about my dad. He's a great example to me.
Mm.
He runs, and he runs a lot, and he runs as part of a running club. And I often
Mm.
hear him talking about the connections he makes there.
Mm.
He has an allotment, and he actually set that allotment up as part of a site plant in
Mm.
Bedford. As part of he moved his allotment into the community that the congregation has been planted in, and that
Brilliant.
was 13, 14 years ago. He's still there. This is big. This is allotment season. If you're
Yeah.
a gardener, you'll know there's a
Yeah.
lot of digging needed at this time of year. So he's connecting with people to the right and to the left of him and building. I wouldn't necessarily say it's, these aren't like, these are on the kind of, these are meaningful connection kind of relationships, probably,
Yeah.
rather
Yeah.
than good friends, but they
Yeah.
give
Yeah.
possibility for good friends.
Yes.
So like if you're into art, go
Yeah.
to an art class. If you're
Yeah.
into
Yeah.
walking, join a hiking group. If you're into reading, we are blessed, aren't we, in our society, in this world? There are many, many different types
Mm.
of interests, and there are ways of building connection and friendship through those, linked to those, where bridges are already there. There's
Yeah.
already a kind of shared interest.
Yeah.
So that's just one. That's just one thought. What would you say?
Yeah. It's similar. And so I can't remember, I'll mangle the quote, but C.S. Lewis talked or wrote quite a lot about friendship.
Mm,
And essentially, I think he said, I hope I'm not really misquoting him, it's important to have that shared interest because
yeah.
otherwise friendship exists in a vacuum. So what do you have in common? And if you've got like a passion for, World of Warcraft or allotment digging or chess or football or beer, whatever it is, that's the thing that gathers you, and it's around that, and you build on that. Then I think the deeper connections come because you don't. I think it's rare to meet someone and say, right, you're going to be one of my three or one of my five. That relationships don't work that way, do they? You start with just an acquaintance, a nodding, knowing their name and their face. In my case, always knowing their face, often forgetting their name, and then it builds. And let's see where God takes that. And I think that friendship is an end in itself, but I think then as well, if we're mission minded, okay, why has God brought me together with this person? Um, that also adds like a sense of love because it's not only what am I getting out of it, but what I'm giving into it. You talked about courage, and that reminded me. So for some people, there's a barrier to building friendships and relationships because it's around um, the cost and the mess, the relational mess.
Yeah.
And the study brings out quite clearly that human beings are bad at what they call effective forecasting. So we're bad at knowing in the future whether something's going to be good or bad for us, how it's going to affect us, particularly in relationships.
Mm,
And um, if I just read this bit, hopefully this will make sense. It's so when people don't form relationships, it's not only because we're seeking solitude, the classic stereotype of someone who just wants to be in their study at home reading a book or listening to music. It's not just that, it's that we want to avoid the potential mess of connecting with others. But we overestimate the mess and underestimate the beneficial effects of human connection. So
mm,
we're making this cost benefit. Sometimes we're making this cost benefit judgment. Oh, actually, is this going to be more work than it's worth it for me?
yeah. Yeah.
Even if we've only got that kind of selfish cost benefit approach, we're probably going to be wrong, and there's going to be more benefit. I remember reading as well about how, in terms of mental processes and mental sharpness, it's better for you to be in a relationship with someone who you're disagreeing with and maybe not getting on with that well than being alone all the time. Even if they annoy you, obviously within limits, but even if they're annoying you all the time, that's still better for you, your cognition and your mental sharpness, than
Yes.
spending too much time on your own.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the brokenness we bring into relationships, wounds, trauma,
Yeah,
loss, they're all they're big things that need grace and space to recognize, work through, and then move forward from. I thought that's very insightful what you shared, that we almost underestimate the benefit and overestimate the pain and mess.
yes,
Um, and one of the things I um, think about quite a lot is how we attach, like attachment patterns and attachment
yeah,
style. And that, I was thinking a lot when you were saying that about how we can have different tendencies from our childhood and different ways of
yeah,
relating to other people.
yeah,
And that all plays its part in whether we feel able to build those connections and friendships, and we can trust enough, we can risk enough.
yeah,
Um, but just to hear this is quote unquote worth it. There is
yeah.
deep value in here.
Mm,
And actually to get help as well. I'd say that if we are
yeah.
struggling to build meaningful connections and friendships and relationships, if perhaps we're feeling a bit of a block, or we're feeling like it is too,
Hmm.
you know, too risky or too painful,
Hmm.
to sort of see that as a place perhaps to find some healing and to find some
Yes.
help.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
There's in the
yeah,
book.
we're
There's a lovely old Turkish proverb: "No road is long with good company."
Isn't that true?
Yeah,
Isn't that true?
yeah.
And how
So,
roads are really long on your own, aren't they?
yeah,
I just think of, friendship and relationships isn't just for the good times.
yeah,
It's not just, oh yeah, who to party with or who to kind of
yeah,
have a laugh with. This is,
mm,
I mean, they really kick in and maybe matter even more when the roads are long and hard
definitely.
and steep.
Yeah,
To have
yeah,
someone walking with you
yes,
is
yeah.
just
Makes
essential,
all the
isn't it?
difference. So, thinking about how our relationships and friendships are different than as Christians and about the church, because we've talked up to now in terms of just the benefits of good relationships and so some deep relationships and some less so, but the psychological, the emotional benefits to us and physiological benefits to us. What's different about the church? And I can start off with that if that would be helpful.
Yeah, and when we're asking that, how do we build these friendships and relationships? One of the answers for me, for those who love and follow Jesus, is in your church family.
Yeah,
And I think we would unapologetically say life groups or smaller groups within your church is is not just an add-on or if you can, but is absolutely essential
yeah,
so that we can build good quality relationships with other Christians,
hmm,
so that we can have community, so that we can have not just the kind of 150, but those 50s and 15s and fives.
yeah,
Um, so I think this actually, you know, to have I think it's essential for Christians to have good quality friendships outside of the church too, with that missional
yes,
mindset, and actually that
yeah,
part of God's grace is being
yeah,
is friendships outside the church.
yeah,
But it's so that's important, absolutely. But within the church is where this really, really, really comes to life. And this is, I think, how God designed us to be, particularly to be in a community of his people. So,
yeah,
yes, to be in community, yes, it's not good for man to be alone, but actually be in a community of
yeah,
other brothers and sisters and
yeah,
spiritual parents, as we talked about on Mothering Sunday,
yeah,
who are God, a means of God's grace for you and to you.
mm,
Um, so I think this particularly has relevance and importance and significance within the church. And what a fantastic opportunity. You want to build good friendships, join a fantastic church, and
yeah,
get connected to other people who love Jesus and are living their lives for him too, heading in the same direction. There's also one of the things that's great about churches. It brings you into contact with difference and diversity and people from different ages and
yeah,
stages and cultures
yeah,
and backgrounds, which is brilliant as well. So you're not just kind of like in this little echo chamber of everyone comes from the same council estate, or
yeah,
drinks in the same pub, or whatever, but
yeah,
actually you get challenged by and strengthened by and blessed by a kind of whole load of beautiful difference. Um,
Absolutely.
but yeah, so and that's where things like reconciliation and forgiveness and conflict and all of the nitty-gritty hard things about relationship um,
Yeah.
really kind of matter too, because we can't just walk
Yes.
away from people in our church
Yeah.
family.
Yeah.
We dig in and work hard and all of those
Yeah.
things. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. That's
cool.
brilliant. And just going back to what Chris brought out about Jesus. So Jesus had a tight knit community of 12, but then also slightly wider than that.
Yeah,
But even within that, recognizing that there were three that he was particularly close to, and that's okay. And that's a model for us in the church. You're not going to be, quote, best friends with everybody in the church. There'll be a small number of people who you particularly connect with. That's okay, as long as we don't keep it there and go more widely. I did a bit of just looked up a summary all of the one another's in the New Testament,
great.
because accepting that there are general benefits, emotional and mental, physiological, just in relationships, good relationships. But then it's like God supercharges that in a redeemed community as the Holy Spirit is changing us and working in us. And just reading a few of those out. So
Mm,
be at peace with one another, Mark 9. Don't grumble among one another, John 6. Be of the same mind with one another, Romans 12 and 15. Accept one another, Romans 15. Wait for one another before beginning communion or Eucharist, 1 Corinthians 11. Don't bite, devour, and consume one another, Galatians 5. Don't provoke or envy one another, Galatians 5. Gently, patiently tolerate one another, Ephesians 4. Be kind, tender-hearted, and forgiving to one another, Ephesians 4. Bear with and forgive one another, 1 Corinthians 3. Seek good for one another and don't repay evil for evil, 1 Thessalonians 5. Don't complain against one another, James 4 and James 5. And confess sins to one another, James 5. I'm like, I read that list, I'm like, wow, the church is better than any other society, better than any other
mm,
ecclesia. And yet, on
mm,
the other hand, I think, oh my gosh, I am not living up to many of those things. So there's that challenge, which is not condemnation,
no,
but hopefully inspires us to say, okay, how can I live up more to your word and who you're calling me to be here? And what I love about this as well is, for some of us, particularly in leadership positions, we can get so energized and exercised on goals.
mm,
Want to achieve this, want to be at this place at this time, do this for the kingdom or whatever.
yes,
But actually, who we're becoming has more emphasis in the New Testament.
mm,
And God doesn't care about great results if actually we're becoming horrible people.
yes, yeah, yeah, well said. Yeah. So I feel like this takes us into perhaps one of our questions. Someone sent a question in just today, actually, talking about life groups and how we deal with
Yeah,
offense.
yeah,
I thought it was so helpful just to kind of get us thinking, okay, what happens if we offend one another or we feel offended?
yes,
Um, there's in life groups, there's something really beautiful that we would want to happen, that people are sharing
yeah, yeah, yeah,
themselves, warts and
yeah,
all.
yeah,
Um, and so there's going to be at times where we offend one another, we kind of bump into one another, um, and I think diversity plays its part in that, doesn't it? Actually,
yeah,
my differences are going to
yeah.
perhaps cause some offense or some difficulty for another person's difference. So yeah, what do we think about that?
Mm,
How would we try and navigate those
mm,
moments and times?
yeah. Um, it's maybe in one sense it's easy to answer the question because it's generalized, and in other ways it's hard to answer the question because it's generalized.
Hmm,
Um, the first thing I would notice is the word offend or offense,
yes.
and um, my my opinion would be that we as people should be harder to offend than anyone else in the world
Hmm,
because of the grace with which we have been given, because we're forgiven. because we're loved by God.
Yeah.
So um, we use the word sometimes, you give offense or you take offense. And I think no matter what someone does to us, we make a choice to take offense at it.
Mm.
Um, I would differentiate that from being hurt.
Mm.
I would differentiate that from finding something difficult. So I'd just probably think a little bit about around that language and what it might suggest and any preconceived ideas there. I'd stand by what I said. I think we should be the hardest people on earth to offend.
That's such a great, yeah, I really
Um,
agree with that. That's such a
but
great
then what do we do?
confirmation.
What do we do when we're hurt or
Yeah.
there's something difficult,
Yeah.
which happens all the time? Um, I'd probably, which is an unhelpful way maybe because it seems so kind of logical and rational. And relationships aren't like that, are they? They're messy and they're. But I'd probably try to get a sense of how important the difficulty is or the difference is. Are we talking about, what at what point in the service do we take communion? Whether or not someone feels they're able to, smoke, use a vape, or what they're watching on streaming platform, or particular food that they eat. And I'd class all of those things, generally speaking, as non-essentials.
Mm.
And you know, taking that step back, why do I want to why would I allow myself to fall out with and not be close to a brother or sister over something that in heaven is not going to be important? So it's important for like a nanosecond of our lives here, but for eternity, it's just like, really is so what? Now that's really hard to do because sometimes we're triggered and we're feeling hurt
Yeah.
and it's overwhelming to us. But I would be thinking in those terms. Then I think, depending on the relationship and the amount of weight it can carry, I just think you talked about courage earlier. I think the courage to be honest.
Mm.
When you said that, when you did that, that really hurt me.
Yeah.
But there's care that's needed there because it's not like you did that to me and it was terrible. It was just like, okay, well, we've got to own our place and our reaction to it rather than kind of shifting all this blame onto someone else and you
Yes.
just want to apologize.
Yes.
So, and trying to have a conversation. And in the book, they do talk about curiosity as well. One of the best things in relationship is to be curious. When you did that, that really hurt me. Was there something behind it? What made you say or do that? Because this was the impact on me. And so being genuinely interested in each other,
That's
I
great.
think is a way in. And then it will probably come to forgiveness.
Mm.
And I said in a previous podcast, I'm the world's lousiest faster when it comes to fasting from food. I'm pretty poor with forgiveness as well because I forgive someone, and then 5 minutes later, I'm like, all the old feelings are back. I'm like, hang on a minute, I forgave them, but no, they're still there. And so I heard someone ages ago talk about forgiveness can be like an onion. You peel away the top layer. You think you've done it, but actually there are more layers to go. So you've got to keep on peeling each time. If you've had the conversation, if you try to work it through, then each time that thought, the resentment, the hurt, whatever comes up, you not only forgive that person, you talk to God. Maybe you get help if you need to, but there's effort there. It's not just a may wave a magic wand and it all goes away. So those are some of the things that would occur to me. How about for you?
Yeah, I think that's so helpful. As you're speaking, I was reminded of something that my old pastor used to say all the time, which was, "My brother is more important than my opinion."
Oh yeah,
My brother or my sister, they're more important. That relationship is far more precious than just being right, or even,
yeah,
even he used to say as well, I've given up the right to be offended. So
yeah,
exactly what you're saying. I just like
yeah,
I don't have that anymore.
yeah,
Conflict is inevitable in relationships. In fact,
yeah,
having healthy conflict
yeah,
and healthy disagreement is part of a strong relationship. If you aren't,
mm,
it's a misnomer, it's a fallacy to think my closest relationships are the ones I have least conflict with.
yeah,
So actually, for kind of rupture in a relationship to then be repaired and restored is what makes it stronger.
Mm.
And if we run away from conflict, which many of us do
Yeah.
because it's painful and hard,
Mm.
and there's perhaps past difficult experiences that kind of make us
Yeah.
particularly conflict averse, if we don't lean into and work through conflict, then those relationships will only stay kind of fairly shallow. So
Yes.
to lean into it where we can, to do what we can,
Hmm.
um, and then recognize it's there's something of a two-way street in a relationship. So I find that helpful verse in
Yeah.
Romans where it says, "As much as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone." I think there's permission there to recognize not all relationships will be perfect or restored or reconciled, but
Yeah.
what do you do your side of the fence? What, as much as it depends on you, can
Yeah.
you, following the Holy Spirit's prompting, your
Mm.
conscience,
Mm.
um, genuine, very clear instructions in the Bible about how to go about restoring relationships. Um, can Are we following those, and can we follow those, and will we then, yeah, as I say, do as much as it depends on us.
Yeah.
I am aware that the New Testament is full of broken relationships
Yeah.
and amazingly restored relationships. There's a
Yes.
fantastic example of the Apostle Paul, who has this disagreement with Barnabas, and it's over this guy John Mark.
Hmm.
And John Mark wants to bring him along on a missionary journey, and Paul doesn't think he's ready.
Yeah.
And so it's this, as I think it's described, as a sharp disagreement, and they
Yeah.
go their separate ways, and God
Yeah.
uses it.
Yeah.
And God, and we obviously follow the Paul's journey in through Acts, but then beautifully we read just this. It's a little throwaway kind of half line at the end of 2 Timothy 4, where Paul is writing to Timothy and he's dying. It's a very emotional passage, and he says, "Please bring a cloak and bring my scrolls and parchments, and please bring John Mark."
Yeah.
And you kind of see, reading between the lines, you see somewhere along the way that relationship's been restored.
Yeah.
And there are other examples where a relationship probably hasn't been restored, but they're able to continue and go on. So it's not like we have to be best friends with everyone and everyone has to
Mm.
live lives in and out of each other's pockets, as it were. But I
Yes.
think that forgiveness, reconciliation, how does the gospel lead to health on every level, is our
Mm.
question for this series.
Mm.
Well, the gospel is a story of reconciled and restored relationship. And
Yes.
so if our relationships aren't reflecting the gospel, we've missed something.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
Jesus comes and
Yeah.
he's the one who
Yeah.
dies. He's the one who suffers and sacrifices. He comes to us. He's the person who reaches out to us. And
Yeah.
so, is there a way we can, in one way or another, tell something of the gospel story in how we are seeking to rebuild and reconcile as
Mm.
much as we can? And this is where wisdom and advice and counsel
Yeah.
and others alongside us can help us unpick some of the uncertainty here. We can feel a bit confused, can't we? Like, I
Yeah.
feel like I'm doing as much as I can. Is there a
Mm.
blind spot? Is there something I'm
Mm.
missing? Like, can you help me? Um, so yeah, a number of thoughts there that I hope are
Yeah.
helpful.
Really good. Um, Chris touched on social media
Yeah,
in his sermon, which was
yeah,
great. And to kind of summarize or paraphrase, he was almost saying, I think he was almost saying, you might feel like you've got 1,000 friends on Facebook or whatever, but don't think that that means that's social health. And he talked about checking in, I think, with his grandchildren, and so what they thought about the pluses and the minuses of social
yes,
media, and they gave some really great answers. The plus side was around, I think, easily finding people, connecting with people, getting information. Um, but I was looking back at the book before we started recording this as well, and one of the things that they pull out very clearly is the unhelpful effect of comparison.
mm,
So if we're someone who we compare ourselves a lot to others, no matter how great our relationships are or our circumstances, we will become unhappier. So it's in the act of comparing, even if we feel like we're doing better than others in some ways, actually the act of comparing diminishes our happiness, and that's one of the findings they came out with. And so it seems to me that that's one of the perhaps corrosive effects of social media.
Yes,
Um,
very helpful.
and I think as well, the perhaps the lie that we could believe that if we've got loads of contacts online, it means that we're okay, we're not isolated. And in one sense, I would say yes, that's true because you can have meaningful conversations online, and many of us do. But there's something about person to person, in person, face to face, that can't be replicated. Um, and there's even a school of thought, I think, that if we focus solely on online, we can start to lose our ability to connect as powerfully in person with others. So, yeah, comparison, isolation, loneliness, anything that jumps out at you in terms of how we can support people, how the church can be different, and how the gospel would lead us to act differently as well.
Yeah, I think I'd love to hear from some of our younger
Yeah.
church members on this because I feel a sort of temptation to quickly dismiss
Mm,
relationships that are online
mm,
as not quote unquote real. And I think some of what I've heard um, people talk about might challenge some of that. And it's maybe it's having um, having a willingness to check on the kind of quality and
yeah.
depth. Um, so I wouldn't. I would be reluctant to say a online friendship couldn't fulfill a lot of what we've been talking about. Couldn't
Mm,
be real. I know young people or even older people playing like gaming and having
yeah.
a real sense of community in the online world.
Yes.
And so I feel like it would be too quick and easy to say that doesn't count. And I think it can. It's just perhaps there's a nuance. Definitely, I mean, it's definitely helpful to say 1,000 friends or contacts on TikTok or Insta or whatever is kind of counts as friends. But I think most people know that. I think it's just the encouragement towards
Mm,
um, genuine connection and
yeah.
friendship that I do believe could happen online.
Yeah.
But I think um, it's having the kind of genuine genuine kind of mindful process to think what quality of relationship
Mm,
do I have. And
mm,
he mentioned things like pre-digested connections. I mean,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah, to Lecture 365 is such a
Yeah.
helpful resource. I know lots
Yeah.
of our church members would benefit from
Yeah.
Lecture 365. It's something I've used at different times.
Yeah.
Sam really loves it, but I thought it was a good challenge from Chris. Those are kind of
Yeah.
pre-digested one-way
Yeah.
interactions,
Yeah.
and although we can feel very close to um, those people who share their thoughts and their feelings, and they do it in a really helpful way. I listen to lots of
Mm,
podcasts, and
mm,
I'm not in a relationship with those people.
yes.
They're not, where are they on the concentric circles? They're not 5, 15, 50. They're actually they're not anywhere on those. They're not even
No.
in my 1,500. I wouldn't recognize them if I walked past them in the street.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's useful just to analyze
Yeah.
what those connections and
Yeah.
relationships are.
It's a helpful kind of consideration of that as well in terms of not throwing baby out of the bathwater. The thing I would say, I would be convinced about this. Reading online, it seems like the practice of the tech giants, the people who founded Facebook or X or others, seems to be with their kids. They don't give them any screens. They don't let them online for
Yeah,
years and years and years. So okay, there's definitely something about our ability to have meaningful online connections and friendships, but I think there's also something about the medium that is seen to be negative to happiness and self-image. Comparison must be a factor there. So I
yeah,
definitely say for our families with younger children, younger children, be really mindful about the access that you're allowing them. Um, in a way, when my boys were growing up, there just weren't that many things around. So it wasn't so hard.
I was going to ask you,
Um,
what did you do with your boys,
yeah,
sort of the
yeah.
older
Well,
life groups?
we kept them away from phones until they were into high school because we wanted a way of connecting with them. And even then, they were relatively dumb phones. And then when the boys were younger, certainly in early teens, although they each had their phone, the understanding was it didn't really belong to them. It belonged to me, so I could check it at any time,
Yeah,
and I would regularly.
yeah.
Um, the other thing was I remember when our family was quite young, someone in the church gifted us an iPad,
Wow.
which was amazing, as a gift. But then I had to think through carefully, and our boys still joke, partly groan and complain that they were allowed like 5 minutes on each. So they'd be playing Angry Birds or whatever halfway through, and one of them would be like, "Right, it's my turn now," grabbing it off them because there would be a timer. So
Yeah. Boundaries.
we just I think we just, without knowing this kind of stuff, we just instinctively felt that kind of small screen was potentially more impactful and potentially more negative than a bigger screen. Particularly, it was very easy to see what's on the bigger screen, and back then as well, we didn't have YouTube on the TV. There weren't, you couldn't stream and things, so it was much more limited, the choices. So yeah, we definitely were cautious about that. And again, I quoting research, I think I read recently in Sweden they're moving towards removing computers from classrooms in
Wow.
primary schools,
Wow.
which is amazing, isn't it? Because you
Yeah.
think, hang on a minute, the world is so technologically advanced, all these kids will fall behind. And the thinking is, well, yeah, up to about 10 or 11, they won't be able to code or do whatever others are doing. But from 12 or 13 onwards, they catch up pretty quick.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Really
interesting
good.
counterpoint.
Yeah, really good. I was going to ask a question around deepening existing friendships and relationships. It's been really good to ask,
Mm,
what if I don't have many friends? And
mm,
that sort of challenge that I think is ringing in all our ears about how essential they are.
yeah.
These, how do we deepen those that we already have? And I'm thinking particularly within the church. What would you encourage
Mm,
in our life groups, in our prayer triplets, in the friendship and community groups that we have in the church?
yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Um,
can I share one?
yeah. I
What
don't
do
know
you
if I
think?
add a great deal to what you've already said, but yeah, you go first.
I'll share one, and this was Chris's. This was Chris's recommendation, and it was a good provocation. How often do we eat together?
Yeah.
So just such a simple, kind of down to earth but biblical idea to
Mm,
see the table, the dining table, as sacred.
mm,
To Yeah, I'd encourage us each. We have people coming around for dinner tonight. Who are
mm,
very much part of our community in within
mm.
the church family. And I'd encourage us to consider using food. It doesn't need to be flash. It doesn't need to be a
Yeah.
three-course meal. In
Yeah.
fact, I would encourage you to make it beans on toast or jacket potatoes or something very, very stripped back and simple, but to take time to literally break bread together and to enjoy sitting and
Mm,
eating, and through that trusting and seeing, in faith, God building relationships over the table. Jesus did it.
yeah.
Chris
Yeah.
pointed this out brilliantly on Sunday, but just
Yeah.
look at how much of Jesus' teaching and
Yeah.
Jesus' ministering and relationship building is around food and drink.
Yeah.
So that's just one, I would say. I'd say to life group leaders, life group members, when's the last
Yeah.
time you ate together? When's the
Yeah.
last time you had a simple meal?
Yeah.
It could be buy a donut and go for a walk. It doesn't have to look like we might necessarily think it would look. I loved our bring and
Mm,
share meal recently, and we've
yes.
kind of tried. I think it's been great that we've tried to restart that. That's obviously a big crowd and a big group, but find places and times to eat together.
That's a lovely one. And there's just something about how it forces us to slow down.
Yeah,
Generally, we're sitting, not standing when we're
yeah,
eating. So we're not moving elsewhere. If you're sitting, you're more focused on the person with you or person around you rather than, what moving. So there's an unhurriedness to it. Yeah, so that's a great one. I think what you said earlier as well about finding things to do that you're interested in, you're passionate about, and finding
yeah.
others to do it with, inviting others to do something you're passionate about.
Yes,
I did something a little while ago, which actually has kind of fallen by the wayside, but it doesn't mean that it's a bad approach. And why I'm connecting it is there's something about intentionality and our time.
Mm,
So for many of us, probably too much to do, too little time. So
mm,
unless we plan time to connect with others, it won't happen. I mean, for some people are just amazing at connecting others wherever they go. They make best friends in the supermarket. I'm not one of those people. I need to be more intentional about it.
mm,
And what I did was I contacted someone I hadn't seen for a while and said along the lines of, look, you're a brilliant person. I love hanging out with you. I get so much from doing it, and I think we could be closer friends. Do you
mm.
want to just meet on a regular basis and hang out?
Wow,
And we did that, and it was really good. And then it kind of fell by the wayside because I wasn't intentional enough. But I think there's something about, depending on who it is with and what level of relationship, and I had a good relationship with this person, being honest and being upfront about, can we try and build something together? I think that can be a helpful thing as well.
that's fantastic. Yeah, that
Mm.
intentionality. Do we have time for one more question?
Yeah, go for it.
And then maybe we should sum up. And this is just a really, really honest question that really kicks into real life for people within our church community. And here it is. Someone asked how to survive church as a single person surrounded by families. So we haven't necessarily been explicit in our conversation so far around singleness, and I thought the word survive within that question was
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
particularly jumped out to me. Actually, it kind of says, "Gosh, I'm just trying to survive it. Just
yeah,
even thriving. Actually, it's just hanging on by our fingernails as a single person surrounded by families."
yeah.
I've got some thoughts, but what would you say?
Mm. Yeah, like you would recognize the depth of the feeling in that question and behind that question. My own experience of church would be that I haven't seen this done well consistently through the different churches that I've been a part of through my life. It seems that family is held up as the model and the priority and the primary way of doing life and being successful in life, to the exclusion of singleness, so that people can feel like second class citizens, and certainly that there isn't any support and organization for them. So they're an afterthought. And so I recognize that. I would say that our position, our understanding is that singleness is valued.
Mm,
It's not a second class status in any way. Um, Singleness is valued in the New Testament. Jesus was single. Paul was single by choice.
yes.
I can imagine. Can you imagine all the theological groupies throwing themselves at Paul? He probably would have
Yes.
had a lot of potential, but he's just like, no, I'm called. So that clarity. And that's not always the case. For some people, they don't want to remain single,
No.
and they're also reminded of
Mm.
family by being in and around the church. So there is a
Super
tension. I
painful.
recognize that.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing I would say, and we could be doing a better job as a church to recognizing and valuing and holding up and celebrating singleness and those who and how we're serving people who are single. So that's on us. I think in terms of how to survive, I don't think it's that different to what we were talking about before. It's about being intentional about building relationships,
Yes.
and building connections and community. In one sense, you have more avenues and opportunities to do so as a single person than you do as someone who has a family.
Yeah.
Now, that can be difficult because everyone you're trying to connect to might have a family. So there's stuff to navigate through there. But I do think that there's more agency and opportunity for a single person.
Can I
I
jump
would
in
say
there?
that.
Can I
Sorry.
jump in there?
Yeah, yeah,
Because sorry, maybe I should let you carry on with your flow of thought, but I was going to say, there's a two-way responsibility here for individuals who aren't single, perhaps they're married, perhaps they have children, to invite people in to share their family dynamic and
yes,
life with people
yes,
who are single.
yes,
And there's that two-way street of, if you are single in a family, don't feel like a second class citizen, but like um pray for and involve yourself in families as the opportunity comes along. And
Yeah.
so I feel like if if you're a single person, there'll be an auntie or an uncle to within in a family, kind of, let's we want to have communities within families where single people are involved on Christmas, birthdays,
Yeah.
high days and holidays,
Yeah.
where people are welcome and they're included, and there's that two-way street. There's something
Yeah.
to pray for, something to lean into when the opportunity comes, even something to ask for. Can I just
Mm.
be a bit more involved in your family? I really love you
Yeah.
guys, and I
Yeah.
want to just be a blessing to you. So yeah, carry on with what you're saying. I'm sorry,
Really
but
good. No, really, really good. We could do more of that. The last thing I was going to say was um, sometimes you might be in the wrong church.
hmm,
If you're not finding connection and community and you're trying, it's really hard, and you're talking about that and maybe getting some input from a leader, it's not happening. Maybe we're in the wrong church,
yeah,
and you need to join a church in which you're going to make better connections. I think I think right now there are more opportunities for single people in their 20s and 30s than we've had before in Grace Church. I think the
in Grace
group
Church,
that
yeah,
Josh and Kat lead is amazing and is
yes,
growing, and many connections are being made there. Um, it might not be that you're finding kind of soulmate friendships there initially, so maybe it's around expectations as well. But I would say that there are a growing number of opportunities to connect and be part of communities and families, in addition to what you said, which I think is fantastic advice.
yeah. And obviously, single. There's a group of single people who are younger,
Yeah,
and then there's single people who are older, and they're
yes,
single after divorce or after
yeah,
bereavement, or they're single and have been single for life, but they're older, and so a young adult setting wouldn't be appropriate for them.
yeah,
But I would say lean into the community. You are a gift to the church, and the church is a gift to you.
yeah,
And so, yeah, perhaps you might need to find a different church. We would throw the kitchen sink,
mm,
at trying to help you feel loved and connected in
yeah,
our family. I would say, as you've said already, I'm deeply sorry for where we've got that wrong, and I
yeah,
recognize we have, and I recognize we haven't brought the emphasis and love and care that we could and should have done. But we would want to. So tell us, like,
yeah,
tell someone, please
yeah,
speak to someone. Say, I'm feeling lonely, I'm feeling isolated because I'm single, I feel disconnected, and we
yes,
will we will, as I say, throw the kitchen sink at looking to build you into a loving family, which isn't just what the church should be a bit like; it's what the church is. We are family, and
yeah,
maybe that's a good kind of summary point to end our time on today. Is actually this privilege we are, not just to be a bit like family, but to
yes,
be part of God's family, intimately and intricately related to one another, that leads to health on every level. Yeah. Anything you'd like to finish by saying, James?
yeah. I'll just pick up on that. I think it's a beautiful end note. So when you look at brands and companies or teams, increasingly, it's about family. Come and join the Chelsea Football Club family,
No,
or be
thanks.
part of the Santander family,
Yeah.
because it's a way of selling, isn't it?
Yeah.
And those things
Buzzword.
are a tiny bit like a family. They're not family. They're not God's design and idea of family. The church is family. We're imperfect because we're imperfect people. As you said, we will repent and say sorry for things that we haven't got right, and there will be many of those. But we're part of God's family, and there's a depth and a richness and a beauty and a hope to that we won't find anywhere else.
Amen.
So, great point to end on. So, this is our penultimate podcast,
Mm-hmm.
and next week will be our very last one, in which we'll be talking about the sermon that Josh is going to bring. What if I can't be healthy? So,
Yeah.
things that are permanent or are we just we exist in our lives that God hasn't removed, and so what does that mean for me? So that's going to be a really important one for us to hear from Josh about and also talk about afterwards.
Yes. Absolutely. Looking forward to that. And you say it's our last one. You mean our last in this series? Because I'm hoping the podcast will come back at another time. I'm hoping
Well,
so.
all the requests we've been getting, yeah, and the appearances in the US on all the major podcast platforms. So you're right, it won't be the last.
Bless you, mate. Good to hang out with you. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Take care.
Cheers.